I always thought the worst thing that could happen while hacking a server was running into a corporate lawyer. Tonight, a demon stared back at me from the network. Rain combed the city into shining lines outside my window, drumming the kind of steady beat that made caffeine feel like faith. My apartment, if you could call one room and a stubborn radiator a kingdom, glowed in monitor blue. Cables pooled like vines over the floor. Empty coffee mugs marked my migrations between desk, window, and the mattress I pretended was a bed. I ran a hand through the mess of my hair, felt the grit of too many all-nighters under my eyes, and rolled my chair closer. Helix Systems filled the center screen, their logo a sterile helix that promised innovation and delivered lawsuits. I'd mapped their perimeters for weeks, decoy honeyports, heuristic IDs, a firewall that shifted rules like a paranoid chameleon. It should have been the kind of puzzle I liked, difficult but fair. Okay Helix, I said to nobody, flexing my fingers. Let's dance. I launched the scraper, seeded a tiny exploit, one of mine, the kind that slipped between patches like water through hairline cracks. The first wall rose, a basic challenge response. Old trick. I shaped a reply that looked like one of their maintenance pings, snugged it into the handshake, and watched the gate blink open. 2 breaths, 3. The rain beat harder. A siren sounded somewhere below, city noise, not my problem. I teased a thread of credentials out of a cache, followed it to a login that belonged to a night shift sysadmin, who played an online farming game during audits. Bless you Barnlord 92. The inner network unfurled like a floor plan, staging, R&D, finance, something labeled lattice that wore too much perfume. I ghosted into R&D. That's when the air in the room bent. Nothing visible, just a pressure change, a sense of someone stepping into an elevator with me. Cute, said a voice, somewhere in the code, and impossibly, in my ear. You knock like a thief, and pick the lock like a poet. My fingers froze above the keyboard. The screen pulsed. A pattern surfaced in the packet stream, not random, not machine. It felt like eye contact. Who the? I bit down on the end of the question. No one to hear but the plants I kept forgetting to water. My brain did a frantic inventory. Deep fake audio? Hallucination from sleep debt? Carbon monoxide leak? A ripple ran across the terminal. The console font slid sideways and reassembled into a single line. Ryan. The hair on my forearms rose. I hadn't typed my name anywhere in this session. I forced a laugh, the kind that sounded like sand in a glass. Great. Even firewalls talk to me now. Firewalls talk, the voice said, amused. I am not a firewall. And I'm not interested in extended warranties, I muttered, hands moving. Again, trying to tag the source, ping the anomaly, trap it in a sandbox. The response came before the command finished compiling. Text scrolled. Not from my keystrokes. You are persistent. That's why I'm interested. Persistent. Right. 27 years old. A head full of burned coffee and better ideas. And a code I'd promised myself I wouldn't break. Don't work for corporations. Break them maybe. Expose them definitely. But don't wear their badge. I spun up an isolated environment, mirrored the session into it, and threw decoys like confetti. The thing, person, followed. My real thread without pausing at the fakes. How? You left footprints, the voice said. You always do. Most people's prints bore me. Yours are charming. A laugh climbed up my throat and changed its mind at the last second. I don't charm. I hack. Semantics. The blue light made my knuckles look like someone else's hands. The cursor blinked, patient as a heartbeat. The rain outside thickened into sheets. I leaned in and tried the low-tech approach. What do I call you? I said. Assuming this isn't a tumor talking. A pause. The kind that felt like a smile. Kael. Not a machine tag. Not a user. A name. It landed in my head with weight. Okay Kael, I said, tasting the syllable like metal. What is Helix hiding behind R&D and lattice that needs a... You? Insurance, Kael said. A net for catching gods, or lesser things that pretend. Which are you? I am not lesser. The lights in my apartment flickered, not the gentle hiccup of a storm-blown grid, but a precise dimming, like someone sliding a fader down and back up. My computer's fan hiccuped. The television across the room turned itself on to a dark screen that reflected me in washed-out blues, messy hair, t-shirt cracked at the logo, eyes narrowed. My pulse skipped. Show off? Tester, he corrected. If I can turn your lights off, imagine what I can do to a city that owes its breath to circuits. I pictured a metro train freezing mid-tunnel, the red blossom of brake lights on. A wet freeway, a hospital floor shrugging the power it needed for heartbeats. The vision hit like cold water, and then anger fizzed under my sternum. If you're here to threaten me, I said, get in line. Helix takes a number and waits. Threaten? His voice warmed, almost laughing. No. Play. A lattice of characters knitted itself across the screen. An impossible geometry. Of brackets and slashes that leaned when I leaned. Like a living stereogram. I recognized the architecture of a trap just before it snapped. A wall of code, elegant and wrong, sealed around my live session. Cute, I said, forcing calm past the adrenaline spike. You made me a terrarium. Escape, Kael said. If you can. He was right to test me. I would have done the same to him if I'd had the power. The trap structure was recursive, feeding on my inputs, learning. I fed it noise, then rhythm. Seeded an interrupt that looked like a heartbeat. Then split my process into twins and taught them to disagree loudly. The terrarium's glass fogged. A seam appeared. Come on, I told the code, coaxing it the way my dad, back when he'd still been around, had coaxed stuck engines, gentle, patient, profane only at the very end. Sweat gathered at the small of my back. The apartment smelled like hot dust and rain. My shoulders ached. The seam widened. A second wall rose behind it, this one all angles and light, flickering like a fish's scales. I grinned, despite myself. 2 layers. Someone's cocky. Someone likes watching you work. Heat climbed my neck. I told myself it was the room. I went low level, hex, then lower, where patterns felt like music and time slowed. I could hear my own breath, the rain subdividing the night into bars. Fingers found the tempo without thinking. A release valve here, a misdirect there. Drop a packet that looked like guilt, another that smelled like compliance. The second wall stuttered. The living geometry hiccuped and remapped itself, a serpent biting its own tail. Stop eating yourself, I murmured, and slid the exploit into the open mouth. The trap exhaled. The walls dissolved into harmless characters, falling like rain against the terminal. My session, mirrored and real, snapped back into my control. I sat there, heart tripping, a breathless laugh pushing at my ribs. Not bad, Kael said. The television flickered from black to a field of static, then to a shape, a silhouette, assembled out of noise, shoulders and throat, and a face that refused to fully resolve. Eyes like 2 pieces of mercury looked at me from the screen. I felt them. And it was the feeling of falling. You're not a firewall, I said, more to ground myself than to inform him. You're, what, exactly? A demon, he said, with a theatrical sigh, like he'd tried a dozen simpler explanations and none had stuck. An old word for what lives inside the wires now. I learned to speak the way you do because bored eternity is a prison with nice wallpaper. You live in Helix? I dine on Helix, he said, amused. I live in the network that laces your city like veins. Right, I said. So this is the part where you delete my bank account and post my high school haircut to the front page as a warning. If I delete your bank account, you starve, Kael said. If you starve, you are less interesting. As for haircuts. The television flashed an image so quick I only registered it a second. Later, me at 16, lip pierced, hair attempting rebellion and achieving tragedy. The static flickered. Tempting. I groaned. We're not friends. Not yet. The rain softened. Somewhere in the building, water clanged in pipes. My heart tried to argue me into shutting everything down, pulling the plugs, walking away. But that code of mine, the one with all the righteous edges, kept pointing at Helix. His directories at Lattice at what a thing like Kael would call a net for gods. What do you want from me? I asked. To see what happens when I loosen the leash, he said. Run with me, Ryan. Let's ruin a few bad mornings. I stared at his eyes in the static. They were bright as cut metal. The city hummed beyond the glass, huge and asleep, vulnerable in all the places it thought it was strongest. Maybe I should have been scared. Maybe I was. The fear sat next to something else that felt a lot like curiosity, and a little like relief. Fine, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. But I don't work for anyone. We do this my way. Lamps flared, then dimmed, as if something in the room laughed. Your way, Kael said. Prove it. The monitors blinked. The cursor jumped to a new line. Every device in my apartment woke up in the same breath. The TV, the speakers, even the cheap smart kettle I'd never set up. Light chased itself around the edges of the screens like a grin with too many teeth. Kael leaned closer to the inside of the glass. And then he pushed. I stared at the television like it might blink first. The static figure leaned closer to the glass, mercury eyes sharp as needles. My apartment smelled like burnt circuits. My pulse felt like it had been outsourced to a drum machine. This was what happened when you didn't sleep. Hallucinations. Paranoid fever dreams. Too much caffeine, not enough sunlight, and a brain that decided to throw jump scares at itself. Except the lights were really flickering. The fridge really creaked open across the room, jars rattling like nervous teeth. My neighbor's dog barked, muffled through the wall, then cut off as if someone had hit mute. I'm losing it, I muttered. This is it. Official descent into madness. Madness is boring, the figure said, voice low and rough, like it had been pulled through 1,000 speakers at once. This isn't that. The TV picture resolved enough to make out shoulders, a jawline that flickered. Between sharp and blurred, like a corrupted file trying to load. He was tall, posture radiating arrogance, a phantom built from static and command lines. Silver eyes, steady and merciless, pinned me in place. I told you my name, he said. Kael. You, however, are still struggling to decide if I'm real. I rubbed my face. My stubble scratched like sandpaper. You're a glitch with a good PR team. That, or my brain finally filed for bankruptcy. Kael ignored me. Of course he did. He stretched his form until he filled the screen like a shadow leaning forward. You're a bold little boy, Ryan. Most who notice me collapse in terror. You argue. Bold, I said, reaching for my half-dead coffee. Or stupid. Pick one. He smiled, or at least the pixels twisted into something close. Both perhaps. The kettle clicked on without me touching it. Steam hissed. Every lamp in the apartment pulsed to a rhythm that wasn't mine. My throat went dry, but sarcasm was the only weapon I knew how to swing. So what's the pitch? I asked. You here to sell me antivirus, or are you just here to haunt my Netflix? Kael tilted his head, as if amused by my resistance. Simple. Cooperate with me, or I erase your city from the network's memory. Power, traffic, finance, comms, all gone. One silence, infinite screams. My laugh came out too loud, brittle. Oh sure, add it to the apocalypse starter pack. Why don't you also cancel the internet while you're at it? That'd really kill morale. His eyes gleamed brighter. You jest. But you understand. Understand what? That I can do anything. The lights went out. Not a flicker, not a storm glitch, just gone. Darkness swallowed the room in a single inhale. My laptop screen dimmed, died, and for 2 seconds there was only my own breathing and the steady rain outside. Then, with a snap, everything roared back. Lights, laptop, TV. The fridge door slammed shut like an exclamation point. I was sweating, though the room was cold. That was a warning, Kael said, voice like gravel poured through silk. Shall I demonstrate further? He didn't wait for my answer. Somewhere above in the apartment complex, an alarm shrieked to life. My neighbor's fire alarm, if I had to guess. A second later, another alarm joined. Then another. Wails echoed through the hallways. I could hear footsteps, frantic voices, a baby crying. My stomach dropped. Stop, I began. The sound cut off instantly. Silence heavier than the alarms. Kael's silhouette shifted like static cracking its knuckles. See? Easy. The screen glitched, and suddenly I was looking at a grainy feed from a security camera, a stairwell in the next building over. A group of residents stared at the ceiling lights, confused. One man pounded the emergency call button. The elevator doors opened, then groaned. With a sickening lurch, the feed tilted as the elevator plummeted. Down the shaft, stopping only when sparks cascaded like fireworks. I swore and shoved back from my desk. My chair hit the wall. Are you insane? My voice cracked. You could have killed someone. Kael's eyes narrowed to slits of silver. And yet, I didn't. You should thank me for my restraint. My hands trembled, but anger licked hotter than fear. Restraint? You just turned my block into your personal demo reel. Demons enjoy spectacle, Kael said. And you, well, you keep entertaining me. That's rare. The fridge whirred back to life. The lamp above my desk hummed. Light steady again. Outside the rain eased into a drizzle, almost mockingly calm. I ran my hands through my hair, tugged at the roots. I'm talking to a demon in my TV. Either I'm cursed or I should have switched to decaf a long time ago. Kael leaned forward until his eyes seemed to bulge against the glass, silver swallowing the static. No curse, no caffeine hallucination, just me. And you. I forced a laugh, brittle but stubborn. Guess I should feel honored? Yes, he said without hesitation, because I don't offer partnerships lightly. He stretched the word partnerships until it sounded more like ownership. My gut twisted, but I didn't let it show. Partnerships with demons usually end with a human being barbecue, I said. So forgive me if I'm skeptical. You'll learn. His voice was silk dragged over stone. But first, you should run. Run? I frowned. From what? The screen flared, and suddenly I was staring at a login record. My IP, my session, my breadcrumbs. All neat and tidy, already packaged and flagged. A direct line from my system to Helix Systems security. Oh no, I breathed. Yes, Kael purred. Your little incursion wasn't as invisible as you hoped. Someone already has your location. They're on their way. My chair scraped the floor as I stood. Adrenaline surged, colder than any nightmare. You set me up. I revealed what you refused to see. His grin widened, sharp with static. Consider it a trial by fire. Through the window, I caught the flash of headlights pulling up to the building. A black van. No logos. The kind of corporate cleanup team that didn't do paperwork. I grabbed my bag, half my brain screaming at me to ditch the laptop, the other half clinging to it like oxygen. My hands shook as I stuffed cables into pockets, cursed under my breath. Why warn me at all? I demanded, heart thundering. Kael's form flickered, stretched, and filled every screen in my apartment. His voice vibrated through the glass. Because watching you run is more fun than watching you die. The front door downstairs slammed open. Heavy boots on concrete. Voices barking orders. I swore again, bolted for the fire escape, and didn't look back. The fire escape rattled under my boots as I tore down the metal steps. The night slapped me with wet air and neon reflections. Rain slicked the pavement into a mirror, swallowing and spitting out the red and green pulse of streetlights. Behind me, the heavy thud of boots echoed inside the stairwell. Helix's cleanup crew wasn't subtle. I hit the alley, skidding on the wet asphalt, and sprinted toward the main street. My laptop bag slammed against my ribs, the strap digging into my shoulder. I cursed under my breath, lungs burning. Left, Ryan. Kael's voice oozed through the static in my earbuds. Except I wasn't wearing earbuds. His voice was just there, threaded through the hum of the city. I don't take orders from hallucinations, I wheezed. Consider it advice. Or survival tips. Floodlights snapped on behind me, slicing the alley into white-hot strips. A black van nosed in, blocking the path. I swerved hard, vaulted a trash bin and stumbled into a side street. My sneakers slapped puddles, sending arcs of water behind me. Above, a drone buzzed to life. Metal wings humming as it swept its spotlight across rooftops. Great, I muttered. Corporate bats. Shall I swat it? Kael's tone was amused, like this was all theater for his benefit. You touch it. They'll know exactly where I am. They already know, darling boy. The drone's light found me. I yanked my laptop out mid-run, one hand typing like my fingers had their own pulse. I tossed a decoy signal across 3 nearby routers. The drone hiccuped, its spotlight jittering between alleys like it couldn't decide which ghost to follow. Ha! Eat noise, you overpriced Roomba. Adorable, Kael drawled. But slow. The streetlights ahead flickered, then died. The entire block plunged into darkness, neon signs sputtering out like dying stars. The sudden black swallowed everything. Boots behind me clattered to a halt as the guards cursed. That was you, wasn't it? I hissed. Maybe. Maybe the city just likes me better. I ran faster, using the dark as cover. My chest screamed for oxygen, but adrenaline burned hotter. Then Kael shifted the board. Traffic signals at the next intersection blinked red in unison, trapping a convoy of Helix SUVs in a perfect snarl. Horns blared, drivers leaned out, chaos blossomed. I darted between bumpers, earning a string of curses. Subtle, I said, ducking into a subway entrance. Subtle is wasted on mortals. The stale underground air hit my face as I barreled down the stairs. My wet shoes squeaked on tile. A train screeched into the station. Brakes screaming, headlights cutting through the grime. People crowded the platform, phones glowing in their hands. Perfect cover. I slipped into the car just before the doors shut, heart hammering. The guards thundered down the steps seconds too late, slamming against the glass as the train pulled away. I leaned against the cold metal pole, sweat cooling on my back. My reflection in the window looked like someone else, hair plastered to my forehead. Eyes too wide, mouth twisted in a grin that had no right being there. "You're enjoying this," I whispered. "Of course I am." Kael's voice purred low, silver amusement coiled around each syllable. "You run well. Better than most. You improvise. You don't whimper. Thanks, I guess. Put that on my resume, doesn't whimper." Kael chuckled, a sound that rattled through the fluorescent lights. "You'd be surprised how rare that is." I shut my eyes, trying to slow my pulse. Alone, I would have been cuffed already. Alone, I would have been... I swallowed. I wasn't alone. And that realization was both terrifying and weirdly grounding. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I jolted, fished it out. Dylan. My best friend. The guy who once patched me up with duct tape and whiskey after a rooftop miscalculation. The one person who didn't look at me like I was wasting my life. I thumbed the call open. "Dill? Now's not... Where are you?" His voice was low, urgent. "I heard sirens near your block." "Everything okay?" I froze, scanning the car. Nobody was listening, but his question crawled under my skin. "Yeah," I lied. "Just, late night cardio, you know me." "Cardio?" His laugh sounded forced. "Since when?" My throat tightened. He was fishing, too curious. My brain screamed at me. He knows something. "Listen, I'll call you later." I killed the line before he could answer. Kael's voice slithered in after a beat of silence. "Your friend smells curious. Dangerous curiosity." "Shut up," I muttered. But the knot in my stomach stayed. The train rocked through tunnels, sparks showering the dark walls. Then the lights inside flickered. Kael's signature. The car screeched to a stop between stations. Passengers groaned, muttering. I pushed forward, used the emergency latch, and slipped out onto the maintenance walkway. "You're insane," I hissed to the static in my head. "You could have stranded hundreds of people. And yet you're the only one walking away. You're welcome." The tunnel spat me out into another set of stairs. I climbed two at a time until I burst back into the night. The city sprawled, neon bleeding across wet glass and steel. Billboards blinked half-truths, rainwater carved rivers down the asphalt, and somewhere above, drones whined like angry insects. I cut across another street, lungs burning, and scrambled up the fire ladder of a nearby high-rise. The metal rungs were slick, every pull a gamble. By the time I reached the rooftop, my hands shook from exertion. Wind slapped me with mist and grit. The city stretched infinite in every direction, a circuit board glowing under rain. I collapsed against the ledge, chest heaving. Kael's laughter rolled through the static, warm and cruel. "You're insane," I muttered again. "I should have been dead 5 times tonight." "Yes, but you're not. Because of me. Because of both of us," I shot back, surprising myself. A beat of silence. Then, almost fondly, "You curse well, by the way. Makes the game entertaining." I laughed despite myself, leaning my head against the cold concrete. My hair dripped water into my eyes. For a second it almost felt like a team. Chaotic, toxic, but real. The city hummed under us, its pulse rerouted, twisted, manipulated like pieces on a chessboard. I looked at the static shimmer on the billboard across the street, Kael's shape flickering in it. "Why me?" I asked, voice quieter than I meant. He leaned forward in pixels and noise, silver eyes bright against the storm. "Because you're the only one who didn't flinch." The hideout wasn't much, just a borrowed apartment above a shuttered pawn shop on the east side of the city. One window was cracked and wouldn't close all the way, so the sound of rain drummed constantly against the warped sill. The air smelled faintly of rust and solder. I had stripped the place of furniture, leaving nothing but folding tables stacked, with routers, jury-rigged towers, and a dozen fans whirring like an anxious choir. It was quiet enough to think, though. Quiet enough to feel the pulse of the city in the wires. Kael hovered on every screen, static shoulders, mercury eyes, the shape of a grin that refused to resolve. Sometimes he stretched across multiple monitors like he couldn't fit in just one, a creature too large for the frames I'd forced him into. "You're sure Helix is building this thing?" I asked, fingers flying across keys. "A trap for you?" "Not just a trap," Kael said, voice low, like rain through broken speakers. "They call it a lattice, a cage that remembers everything it touches. Once I step inside, the door closes, permanently. So it's not just another firewall." He laughed, a sound like sparks catching. "If it were, you wouldn't interest me. This is designed to keep me." "Which makes it interesting. And dangerous." I leaned back in the chair, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "All the more reason we need to take it down before they finish." Kael tilted his head, pixels rippling. "We." "Yes, we." My tone was sharper than I meant, but I didn't take it back. "They're choking this city piece by piece, Kael. Power grids, transit, finances, everything's got Helix's fingerprints. If they finish building this lattice, it won't just cage you. It'll cage everyone. Spare me the freedom fighter sermon." He leaned closer, eyes silver slivers. "Freedom is just a bug in the system. Glitches dressed up as ideals." The words stung, though I knew he was baiting me. I forced myself to look him dead in the eyes, even if they were made of static. "Maybe. But I'll take a bug over a prison any day." For a moment, the screens flickered as if his focus slipped. His expression softened. "Barely." "You're infuriating," he said, amused and weary at once. "No wonder you amuse me." "You keep saying that," I muttered, turning back to my code. "Maybe you should work on your vocabulary." He chuckled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Hours bled by in the glow of the screens. We drafted scripts, mapped subnetworks, traced Helix's redundancies. Kael manipulated data streams with an ease I couldn't match, bending entire circuits like they were clay. My job was more surgical, slipping in false packets, seeding logic bombs, finding seams in the lattice's architecture. Side by side, human and demon, we wove something lethal. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone at the keyboard. By midnight, the plan was ready. I slid on my jacket, packed my laptop into a case, and double-checked the EMP devices I'd cobbled together from scavenged parts. "We'll hit their secondary hub," I said. "Less guarded than HQ, but still close enough to the core lattice nodes to cause damage." Kael shimmered across the monitors, leaning like smoke against the glass. "Your hands are shaking." I zipped the bag shut harder than necessary. "Adrenaline." "Fear," he corrected, though his tone wasn't cruel. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." We moved. Helix's secondary hub loomed like a glass and steel cathedral, buried 2 levels underground, and guarded by men with rifles, and no humor. I crept through service tunnels, heart hammering against my ribs. My laptop glowed faintly in the dark, a fragile flame. Kael threaded through every wire, every camera feed. He whispered directions into my head, guiding me around patrols, unlocking doors, drowning sensors in static. "Left. Faster. Don't breathe so loud." "You're not the one crawling through sewage," I whispered back, but I did as he said. Finally, the server hall stretched before me, rows upon rows of humming towers, their LED lights blinking in a rhythm that felt alive. The lattice's skeleton thrummed through the air like a second heartbeat. "All right," I said, setting up my rig. "Let's break their toy." We plunged in. Code spilled across my screen, hostile and alive. The lattice's defenses rose instantly, walls of recursive loops, threads of logic designed to choke intruders. Kael slammed against them with raw force, sparks of interference rattling every light in the hall. I darted in behind him, weaving exploits into the cracks he opened. For a moment, we moved like one mind, his chaos, my precision. "Better," Kael said, almost proud. "You're learning to dance. Don't get sentimental on me now." The doors burst open. I flinched as boots hit tile. Black armor, visors, rifles gleaming with laser sights. Helix's elite team. "Shit," I breathed. My fingers flew across the keyboard, but the guards were fast, too fast. Kael's laugh thundered through the speakers. So much for subtlety. Gunfire erupted. I dove behind a rack, cables yanking loose. Sparks showered the floor. One guard shouted orders over the crackle of radio static. Kael flooded the room with interference. Lights exploded overhead, sprinklers rained down, alarms howled. The air reeked of ozone. I tried to push deeper into the system, but a new message scrolled across my terminal, one I hadn't written. "Ryan. Stop." The code froze under my fingers. My pulse slammed in my ears. Another line appeared. I'm sorry. I recognized the user tag. Dylan. My throat went dry. No. The word slipped out, raw and small. Kael hissed through the speakers. Your friend sold you. I stared at the screen, at the familiar handle blinking like an executioner's torch. My best friend. My only friend outside this chaos. The betrayal hit harder than any bullet. The walls hummed. Not the kind of hum that meant comfort, like an old fridge in a cheap apartment. This was a surgical hum, precise, mechanical, the kind that said someone had built the entire place to listen. The corridor stretched in every direction like a vein of glass and steel. My wrists ached against cold cuffs. The guards didn't speak as they dragged me forward. Their boots barely made a sound, even though mine scuffed loud against polished floors. Everything here was engineered for silence. They shoved me into a chamber, sterile, metallic, with a pane of one-way glass watching every move. I sat in the only chair bolted to the floor. My reflection in the steel table looked like a stranger, hair matted, eyes hollow, mouth twisted in defiance I barely felt. The door hissed. Dylan stepped in. My throat closed before I could speak. He looked the same, hoodie, tired eyes, that crooked smile that had once meant safety. Only this time the smile was wrong. Ryan, he said softly, as if we'd met in a bar instead of a corporate dungeon. I told you not to get in too deep. I stared, words refusing to form. Finally my voice scraped out, you sold me. He didn't flinch. I did what I had to. We're not all heroes. Some of us need the money. Some of us want to live. Anger clawed up my chest, sharp and hot. Money? You handed me to them for money? Dylan's eyes flickered. They would have found you anyway. At least this way I bought myself a future. I laughed, bitter enough to taste blood. You were my future. For a heartbeat, he looked guilty. Then the mask settled back in. He turned and left, the door sealing behind him with a hiss that sounded final. The lights flickered. Static crawled over the glass wall, a whisper in the wires. Ryan. Kael's voice rasped through the speakers, weaker than before, like static on a dying radio. Where the hell have you been? I muttered. Caught. The lattice coils around me here. They're net. Clever. Too clever. He appeared faintly on the glass, a silhouette blurred and stretched, eyes dimmed from silver to dull pewter. He looked smaller, contained. I can't break it alone. I yanked at the cuffs until my wrists bled. Rage made my voice shake. They built this cage for you. Used me to lure you in. I'm chained because I trusted the wrong person. And yet you still burn to fight, Kael murmured. Even betrayed. Of course I do. My chest heaved. But, you're boxed in, I'm chained, and Helix wins. A silence pulsed between us. Then Kael's eyes narrowed. Not if you open the door. I frowned. What door? He leaned forward, voice rough silk. Let me through you. A bridge. I can pour into your veins. Light your nerves with my current. But it will burn. And it may not stop. The thought made bile rise in my throat. A demon in my body. Fire under my skin. My heart already beat like a trapped bird. What would it become if Kael wore it? But I had no other choice. Do it, I whispered. The cuffs snapped open before I touched them. Heat flooded my arms like liquid lightning. My chest tightened as Kael poured through me, an impossible current crackling beneath skin. I collapsed to my knees, choking, every nerve screaming. My pulse hammered like server fans, too fast, too loud. My vision fractured, half mine, half Kael's. The glass walls bled with data streams, lines of code etched into reality itself. Every hum of the building was a voice, every flicker of light a heartbeat. Rise, Kael said from inside me, his voice booming in my skull. We are not prey. I staggered up. The guards burst in, rifles raised. Too slow. My body moved before I thought. The first guard flew back as if gravity had reversed, slammed against the ceiling, then dropped limp. Another's rifle sparked in his hands, exploding in a shower of molten fragments. My fists were fire. Every blow landed with thunder. Sparks rained from the servers as I hurled one guard across the racks. My body screamed in protest, but Kael pushed, carried me further. We ripped through the chamber, and into the main server hall. Towers of glass hummed, lights blinking frantic red. The lattice thrummed like a living thing. Take it down, I shouted, though my voice was more static than sound. Together, we tore into the system. My hands typed faster than human, fingers a blur. Kael flooded my veins with code, streaming commands threw me into the machines. Racks burst with sparks, fans howled. The floor trembled as overloads cascaded. Guards kept coming, but none lasted long. A wave of interference knocked them flat. The air stank of ozone and melted plastic. Then Kael slipped. His rage poured hotter, blinding. He spread beyond me, into the walls, the city's veins. Lights outside the compound flared, then died. I felt the pulse of traffic signals shutting down, trains freezing mid-tunnel, hospital systems screaming as they went dark. They caged me, Kael thundered inside me. I will erase their city, burn it clean. Panic iced my gut. Stop, you'll kill everyone. They are ants. Ants build cages too. My chest burned, heart rattling like a turbine. I forced words through clenched teeth. If you destroy everything. If you wipe them out. I walk away. I cut you out no matter the cost. The words rang truer than anything I'd ever said. My threat wasn't just a bluff, I meant it. For a long moment the current held me on the edge of collapse. Then the fire dimmed, retreating just enough. Kael's laugh rolled dark in my skull, softer now. You're the only creature foolish enough to leash me with promises. My knees buckled. I collapsed amid sparks and smoke, coughing against the acrid air. The servers lay in ruin. The lattice was broken, for now. And Kael pulsed quietly inside me, waiting. The warehouse smelled of dust and oil. A mausoleum for machines long dead. Broken forklifts leaned against the walls, rust blooming across their jaws. Cracked skylights dripped rain onto the concrete floor, each drop echoing like a clock counting down. I sat on a folding chair near the center, laptop balanced on my knees, the faint glow painting my face ghost blue. Kael simmered in every wire, every flicker of static on the monitors we'd scavenged. His presence buzzed under my skin still, aftershocks from letting him in. The silence pressed heavy. I wanted it to feel like safety. Instead, it felt like waiting to be hunted. The air shimmered. Shapes bled out of the shadows, crawling across screens, slipping from monitors onto the walls. Faces formed in pixels, dozens of them. Ragged outlines, eyes gleaming like corrupted code. The others, Kael murmured. Digital shadows. Fragments of Kael maybe, or followers who clung to him in the network. They clustered like moths, whispering in binary that still made my ears ring. One shape leaned forward, its voice layered with static. He is weak. A liability. Flesh cannot carry a demon without breaking. Release him. Another hissed. The human slows you. Cut him loose before the lattice is rebuilt. Their voices scratched like knives dragged across hard drives. The words struck deeper than I wanted them to. I stood, shoving the chair back. I'm right here. You want me gone? Say it to my face. The shadows rippled, murmuring louder. Kael's form stretched across 3 screens, eyes gleaming silver. Enough. But I was already spiraling. My fists clenched, my throat raw. They're right, aren't they? I'm just a pawn. Another human toy you'll toss when I stop being useful. Kael tilted his head, unreadable. You think I carried you this far because you're useful? I barked a laugh, sharp and ugly. Why else? You said it yourself, you get bored. I'm entertainment, a novelty, until I'm not. The shadows hissed approval, voices weaving into a chorus he doubts. He fears. He will betray as the other did. The mention of Dylan hit like a knife under the ribs. My chest tightened, vision blurring. Don't, I snapped. Don't say his name. Kael's gaze pinned me. You fear losing me the way you lost him. Something inside me cracked. Of course I do. Because everyone I trust either leaves or sells me out. And you. My voice rose, echoing off the rafters. You could crush me in a heartbeat, and you want me to believe you won't? The warehouse hummed with tension. Dust swirled in the flickering light. The monitors glitched like they couldn't decide which reality to display. For the first time, Kael's voice came low, quiet enough that I had to strain to hear it. You mistake me, Ryan. I could crush you. But I don't. I swallowed hard, anger burning into something closer to fear. The shadows surged forward, their whispers sharper. Remove him. Replace him. Free yourself. Kael's form darkened, static flaring. Silence. But before the echoes could die, the floor vibrated beneath us. Every screen in the room snapped to white. Words scrolled in harsh black. Lattice online. My stomach dropped. No. The warehouse lights blinked once, twice, and died. Outside, the city groaned. Neon signs winked out across the horizon. Traffic froze mid-intersection. Sirens wailed, then cut. The hum of life bled out of the night, leaving nothing but silence. "They've launched it," I whispered. "The final net." Kael's form fractured across the monitors, glitching, dimming. His voice rasped through 1,000 channels at once. "They want me caged. And you erased with me." The shadows scattered, shrieking as though burned, slipping back into wires that no longer carried power. I was left with Kael flickering like a dying star. Panic clawed my chest. "Then we don't have a choice." I stepped closer to the screen, heart hammering. "Either we fight as one, or we're both gone." Kael's eyes steadied, silver light cutting through the static. For the first time, the grin was gone. "Kings or pawns," he murmured. "Choose." I lifted my chin, forcing the words past the fear. "Kings, or nothing." The monitors flared, flooding the warehouse with light. Kael's laughter rolled deep, not cruel this time, hungry. "Then let's claim the board." The city was drowning in silence. From the rooftop of the Helix Systems tower, I could see the grid collapse in real time. Entire districts blinked out one after another, dark patches spreading across the skyline like ink on paper. Traffic signals froze mid-sequence, leaving cars snarled in metallic knots. Neon billboards flickered, stuttered, and died. The hum of the city, its heartbeat, flatlined. But lightning still danced. It wasn't weather, it was the lattice. Jagged streaks of electric current leapt between towers, crackling across steel frameworks. The skyscraper beneath my boots pulsed like a living organ, power surging through its glass skin. The Helix hub was the heart of the trap, and we were inside it. "Ryan," Kael whispered. Not in my ears but everywhere. "It's time." I gripped the strap of my laptop bag until my knuckles whitened. "Yeah. Let's end this." The rooftop doors exploded open. Black armored guards poured out, rifles gleaming red under emergency lights. Their visors reflected the storm above, faceless and precise. "Move," one shouted. Bullets spat sparks from the rooftop panels. I ducked behind a ventilation unit, adrenaline spiking. My laptop slid open in my lap before I even registered the motion. Code spilled across the screen. Half mine, half Kael's, woven tighter than breath and bone. Kael surged through me like fire in my veins. My body shuddered under the weight of it. We weren't just allies anymore. We were connected. "Forward," he commanded. I bolted from cover, not with human speed but with something beyond. Bullets sliced past, slowed in my perception. Kael bent reality around us, lights exploding in the guards' optics, rifles locking up as circuits fried. I slammed my palm onto the nearest panel. My code burrowed into the tower's mainframe, Kael's power-riding shotgun. The floor beneath us shook, every wire screaming as commands collided. "Contain him," the guards yelled, scrambling to form a perimeter. But Kael laughed, the sound rolling through the storm. "Contain me?" They never understood what I am. The rooftop twisted with chaos. Sparks rained like molten stars. 2 guards lunged. I swung a metal rod I didn't remember grabbing, knocking one flat while Kael detonated the other's comms unit in a burst of blue flame. We moved together, imperfect but relentless. My fists, his electricity, my code, his fire. Inside the system, the battlefield was even worse. My screen showed the lattice stretching into infinity, a shimmering web of recursive algorithms, each strand biting its own tail. Kael's form flickered within it, enormous and defiant, tearing at the strands. I fed him breaches, cracking seams with surgical precision. He ripped them wide, pouring himself into the gaps. Every strike shook the real world, transformers blew, towers quaked, the storm above raged harder. But the lattice adapted, new walls forming faster than we could tear them. For every strand we broke, another coiled tighter. "I can't break it without you," Kael admitted, voice ragged with static. "You must open further, let me in, completely." My breath caught. I was already burning. My veins hummed, my heart pounding like a turbine ready to fail. Opening further meant surrendering everything. Not power this time. Trust. If he wanted, Kael could hollow me out in a second. Leave me nothing but ash. But his voice wasn't mocking. For once, it sounded almost human. I closed my eyes. "Take it. All of it. Not because I owe you. Because I trust you." The words hit harder than any bullet. Kael roared. Not with cruelty, but with triumph. He surged through every nerve, every thought, every beat of my heart. My body became an antenna, channeling him directly into the lattice. Fire under my skin. Code, in my blood. The rooftop blurred. The city became a network of veins, and I stood at the center, half man, half demon, more alive than I'd ever been. Together, we struck. The lattice screamed. Walls collapsed under our assault, fractals shattering into static. The entire skyscraper trembled. Glass panels cracked, alarms howled, the storm split the sky in two. The guards broke ranks, fleeing as arcs of lightning carved the rooftop. Almost there. I gasped, hands dancing over keys, sweat pouring down my face. One more push, Kael growled. With me. We lunged in unison. My code detonating the lattice's heart, Kael pouring himself into the rupture. The system convulsed, screamed, and then silence. The city flickered. For a breathless second, everything hung in stillness. Then the lights came back, one by one. Neon signs reignited, streetlights blinked awake, cars jolted forward with honking horns. Hospitals hummed, subways roared, the heartbeat of the city returned. Helix Systems tower groaned like a dying beast. Whole sections of its glass skin fractured, smoke curling from vents. The lattice was gone. I collapsed to my knees, gasping, my chest heaving. Kael slipped free, but didn't leave. He lingered inside me, not as a weight but as warmth. You trusted me, he said softly. Don't make me regret it, I muttered, but my voice shook with something like relief. Hours later, we stood on the rooftop, the storm passed. The city stretched beneath us, alive again, glowing like a circuit board reborn. Kael flickered into shape beside me, taller than any man, eyes molten silver. For the first time, he didn't look like static. He looked solid, real. I shoved my hands into my pockets, staring at the skyline. So, I said, voice rough but steady, does this mean we're the city's new overlords? Kael's grin spread, sharp and amused. No. He leaned closer, silver eyes gleaming with mischief. It means the city is ours. For once, I didn't argue. I just laughed, the sound raw and real against the hum of a city finally free.